Evening. My name is Jim Conlan from RCB Radio Sport, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. We continue our build-up now to the Senior Championship as we preview the game between Cooraclare and Saint Breckans, and I'm delighted to be joined by part of the Cooraclare management, David Russell. I suppose, David, I suppose when you look back in 2019 for Cooraclare, it was a championship where you came to form as such, probably a disappointing league. You were trying to build and build, but in championship you were very close to getting out of that group. That game with Donie Garrihy could have gone anyway, and as we know, Donie Garrihy went on to compete in the county semi-final, beating Arrow. But you saved your best performance probably to the last game in the group, and then obviously your comprehensive victories over victors over Corfin in that relegation match. So you probably were coming good as the championship got better as it went along, I suppose. So you're probably disappointed you didn't get out of the group.
Of course, disappointment. Of course, I suppose over the whole season. I know we finished strong towards the end, but that was a little too late. I suppose Jim, over that season, like new management, new setup with a young panel. A few bits and pieces didn't go right. We had long-term injuries to Killian Roach and Pierce Lillis. Then Pierce went to America for the summer. Then two main players, and John O'Donoghue was injured when he came back in the county. So look, there was bits and pieces, but for a first year at it, we saw a bit of an upward curve towards the end. But you consistently have to be over 8 or 9 months, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose, David, we'll move on now to this year, and I suppose some teams were lucky enough that they got a match early on in the year in the Cusick Cup or the Garrihy Cup. How did Cooraclare fare? Were you one of the lucky teams? I know some teams, like in this time, it didn't, but did Cooraclare get a game in, and how did that go for you?
Yes, we got a game in. We lost to Corfin, but I suppose the conditions that evening was just were atrocious. But I suppose, look, it was a starting point, and of course delighted to get the game today, even though we were beaten. But you were hoping for the following week then to start developing your squad over the year. But look, what happened. You can't change that. When you have a young squad, you need the more games you get, to build and build and build, and that's what we were wanted. But that we were stopped in our tracks with that, and so with the other team.
Yeah, and you mentioned a young squad, and I suppose Cooraclare have been a team sort of since the county final that have been in tradition, and you are coming in. You can obviously see the progress that has been made. I suppose losing the likes of Damien Burke, Tom Downs, Rory Donnelly. I don't know if Thomas Conlan and Cathal Lillis are still involved in the scene, but they were all players that heavily featured in Cooraclare's run to county final. And I suppose in the last year or two, some of those lads haven't been available due to injuries, due to retirements, due to transfers, due to being based in Dublin and all that sort of stuff. So it has been a very much going down, going to the underage structure and picking out quality young players just out of minor and basically out of 21 and throwing them into the deep end and see how this get on.
For sure, that's why I took the job. I knew there was a lot of talent over here, but they won a minors, they won a 21 championships. It was a change in the guard, I suppose. In Clare, they know more about it than me. And that side of it, like 15, they lost the county final. I think a lot of lads have put a lot of effort to make that over a year or two, So yeah, look, we brought they won the minor B last year, Cooraclare, and we brought eight of them into the squad, as a training panel, and they're learning and go. Look, it's all about building and building and building. Like, I know we get a setback there with Sean Donoghue going away and James Burke going to Australia and Dermot Tuberty going to Australia. But then things happen. But, if they come back into the fold later on in another year or something like that, it's great. But we have to develop, 20 good players, 22 or 3 good players even,
And I suppose a good sign, I know I've been involved in the county minor for the last 2 years myself, so I've seen some of these Cooraclare youngsters coming through in terms of quality. You had Pádraig O'Donoghue, who featured heavily for the Clare minors in 2018, and Micheál Garrihy. I know Micheál very well, absolutely outstanding footballer. He was sensational for us last year in the Clare minor, and probably in the top 3 minors in the county in Clare, and if not Munster. In fact, that's how good I'd rate Micheál. So so those two guys are blossoming, and I suppose So losing the likes of Sean O'Donoghue, but getting in a player of real quality like Micheál Garrihy as well as a boost, because not many people have clubs around the county of a player of that quality.
Without doubt, massive quality in Padraig and Micheál. But you have to mind them. Like even last year, Padraig, like he came to me there, he was playing minor hurling, minor football, and there was playing junior football, and then he was playing senior football. So these guys have to mind it, and of course you want your class, you want your bit out of them. But in the long run, lads are just going to, you have to mind them, and they'll have the better respect for, like, to me and our management, if we do look after them that way. And eventually, if you can get to the top table of Clare County football, eventually, you will see the reward from them. Like, that's what it's all about. And regards to Micheál Garrihy, his first year, Padraig played last year, Micheál's first year, it's not that easy, even the size of the man and how good he is to play adult football. There's always somebody out to cut you down. And, that's life in big boy sport.
Yeah, and I suppose your opponents, Saint Breckan, I mean, they were down in intermediate championship, but people said it was a shock for them to go down to intermediate in the first place. Many people felt they had too much quality to be below in the intermediate grade. And I suppose they proved it in terms of, even when Kildare pushed them all the way, they had that sort of resources against a good Kildare team to get over the line. And we saw what they did in terms of the Munster campaign as well, getting all the way to a Munster final. So I suppose Saint Breckan have been a team over the last year. If they get on a bit of a roll or a bit of hot streak and a bit of momentum, they do carry an awful lot of firepower. And there's some of the best young forwards in Clare. And I suppose, and you look at the Clare team, you see a good few of them like Joe McGann inside with Colin Collins and stuff like that. They do possess an awful lot of firepower for Saint Breckan. So they're probably the one team that coming into this senior championship, no team has a bit of bounce or momentum or anything like that, but they still probably have a tiny bit of momentum still from last year.
Yeah, well, I was doing my notes there for the interview. I was just saying, like, of course, every team got affected by the virus, but maybe, with their Munster Championship and stuff, that they did a bit of a break, might have just done them a power of good, because, and they had the momentum, of course, like they were on a crest of a wave, and rightly so, that Kildare team they beat, like, it would easily put up a round or two in senior football too. So, they were two good teams that they could easily play senior football. And, when you come out of intermediate football, some people, times teams can bounce back down again. But now they've come with such amount of talent, they're going to stay around now. Of course, hopefully with immigration, all that, and looking after them, team, look their area. So the signs look good for Breckans, but hopefully we won't be this year,
Yeah, and I suppose the last time Cooraclare and Breckans met in the championship, it was a really game of two halves. I suppose it was right up. Cooraclare just absolutely dominated the first half. I remember watching it behind the Kilrush, and then Breckans came out at the second half and then just took over the second half, and momentum was there. So it was a really sort of seesaw battle. Both teams had their side periods of dominance, really, and it was. But what happened was when both sets of forwards attacked, both seemed to cause an awful lot of inroads. So these are two teams that are capable of putting up high scores. So it's going to be very much a case how do both defences react and get on in the day.
Well, exactly. I mean, if you go back to the last few years, like, I mean, Milton have proved a very efficient team and how to defend as a full, like, you putting up scores is great, but if you don't do the business with your mind, just keep the scores down, you're not going to win championships, and that's what, high scoring games are good for the spectators, but I don't see, you're pulling out a championship in Clare, like doing that kind of football at all, a full tilt all the time, because the Kilmurrays and the Milltowns are very effective at keeping scores down,
I suppose, David, aside from the Kilmurray Breckan Milltown game that's drawn in the senior round, people are looking and they're probably edging other clubs in relation to other games, 60-40 maybe for some teams. But often people are finding it very hard to call this game, including myself included. It seems to be like this is going to be another step up for Breckans. This is going to be a good test for you as well. This is very going to, even speaking to Donie Garrihy, he thinks this will go right down to the wire. You could be talking extra time in this game. You could be talking even last kick of the ball, even penalties that you look at it on paper, the teams are so evenly matched and both coming with a good crop of youngsters, both exciting sort of forwards. It's very hard. I know football can throw up an awful lot of surprises very on the day, but if you look at it from the outset, it seems to be a very, very 50-50 game.
Yes, that's what maybe I will call that too. You know, as well, it would be very even. You know, football and teams. You know, with the amount of use. Yeah, look, you get to play for 1 hour a certain day of the week, and you have to turn up, and that's what it is. You know, and if you can't switch on for that hour and get it done, you know, you can't play it the day after or the hour after. You know, so it will be, you know, with the amount of football, with the talent that's on the field, it'll come down to a bit of, you know, a block down or something like that. And you know, there are skills of the game that has to be done as well. You know, block down the ball, you know, get in your hands, slow down a man. You know, them are the small aspects. Like, I mean, fine kicking your points, but if you can't do the nitty gritty stuff like that, you know, they're the ones that get you over the line. You know, in
Yeah.
football.
And I suppose I know, David, you probably, apart from Colm Dillon, you probably have the second best target man in Clare football in John Looney, in terms of his impact around the midfield and his impact in terms of the edge of the square as well. He's very similar mould to Colm Dillon in what he gives to Cooraclare. But I suppose John being based the last 3 year work has brought him out to Germany and stuff like that. With COVID-19, is John very much back home this year? Is he available to you?
Yeah. Yes, well, he returned home there. I think it's around Christmas time to work in West Clare. So, you know, it's great. It's great to have the target man. You know, oceans of football. You know, kick off both legs. You know, as you said, like Colm Dillon and himself are two prime examples of how you get over a mass defence. If you know, you can have a ball into the square there, and you know, if they didn't feel that it's going to be havoc for a defence, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose that in terms of, we all know what a legend Rory Donnelly was for Cooraclare Club, and you played with Rory for many years in the Clare sort of jersey as well. I suppose when Rory left the scene, it leaves a chasm, a hole for someone to sort of fill in behind. And I suppose young Jack Morrissey was probably, even though he mightn't have liked it, he probably had to sort of fill the boots that Rory left behind. And I suppose they're daunting boots. And I suppose Jack has been coming all the time. And he's finally beginning to fulfill and blossom into that role. But it's all very hard with someone of the talent and the magnitude of Rory Donnelly to expect a young lad to fulfill the big void that Rory left behind when he left.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, Rory Donnelly, I think when you talk to him, like I played with Rory in Clare, but I think when you talk to more people around Cooraclare, he had an awful presence around there, the way he carried himself, and you know, they looked up to him, you know, and he was a great finisher and everything. And you said maybe Jack, that's what Jack had to take that mantle. And you know, Jack, I think they're only 21 or 22 there now, 21, 22. You know, these boys, you know, they're not exactly men yet. You know, Pierce was only 23 the other day. You know, wait till these boys are 24 or 5. If they're kept in the country and kept in, you know, good jobs around, that's a lot of it. But you know, that's what it's all about. If you can keep your squad around in 24, 25, 26, that's when you know you'll have a team reckoned to compete at the later stage of championship football in the county. You know.
Yeah, and I suppose, David, you're probably like most clubs, you're probably 3 weeks back now at this stage, I presume. You're probably doing a lot of fitness work, probably doing a bit of ball off both feet, a bit of ball work, getting them used to that. But in terms of the old challenge circuit now, you don't have to tell me who you played or anything like that. But speaking of some of the top teams who are being predicted for honours, they've been able to go outside the county and source games and travel games. And I spoke to a few clubs in the intermediate bracket, and they found that if they weren't involved in the Garment Cup, they found it extremely hard to get challenged. I know some intermediate clubs have played junior A teams in terms of their sort of challenge games. How's it been for Cooraclare? Have you gone outside the county route?
No, we haven't gone outside the county. I suppose, like, you know, it was all a stepping curve. You know, we were. We hopefully will play in our Garment Cup game the next 2 days now after speaking to you. And you know, that'll be a very competitive game. It's a fine line, like you know, you can get all this fitness work in, you can get these games, and we'll have to have a good hit out in a challenge game, or probably in the Garment Cup. Like, but it's how you manage your players. Like, I mean, I'd rather in 3 weeks' time have a full fit squad, even if they weren't fully up to scratch. At least they're ready to go. You know, because some teams you'd hear around are losing 3 or 4 lads to hamstrings and different types of injuries. You know, if you can start your championship with a full deck, you know, you get momentum. You win. If you win that one or whatever, you have another chance 2 weeks later. You know, you've got 6 weeks to basically be right, and if you can hit it right, then that's what it's all about. You know, you can't be overcooked now. If we're not going to do in 6 weeks' time anyway. That's for sure. You know,
I suppose, David, in terms of Cooraclare this year, you probably still have a big pool of players. You're probably still picking out, I suppose, out of 28 to 30 sort of players in terms of selection. And I suppose the Garmin Cup, it gives you that opportunity to look at lads maybe from 15 down as far as 22, 23 in terms of what options that you have in terms of coming down the home stretch against Breckans with around 20 minutes to go. If a guy starts to dozen in his Garmin Cup, you know, you can turn around and say, right, Tom, get your boots on. I've seen you last week. You hit 1-3 in that team. I know you have some bit of form. So it probably gives you that option. Not really. You probably, for Cooraclare, it's more about developing the 20-man team rather than the 15-man team in terms of the Garmin Cup.
It's like we're carrying 34 in our panel actually, and you know, I mean, everybody is accounted for, everybody's giving an effort, and you know, it can't even be over 20 because people go out of the country, they go way of education, they go everywhere, you know, so you cannot, you know, just say there's Sean Donoghue, there's your midfielder for the next 10 years. It doesn't happen anymore. People travel and stuff, so like that's why we brought in 8 minors, you know, in the end of the day, what's going to play for them? Maybe 2 of them might play a senior football, but if you only take in 2 and 2 go away, you've none. So
yeah,
you know, you have to put them into the pressure. Now look, everybody's hitting out of less games this year. Look, we were in the Garrihy Cup. We really wanted to develop players and that. But look, that's gone now. That's history. So look, this one is a funny championship. We're going to have to take it, but you know, it's all about building. And like there was no more than, I suppose, look, Breckans are building as well, but they're a small bit ahead of us in the curve. You know, even though they only came up, they're still a bit ahead of us because they got the momentum of winning a lot of games last year. You know, and that you can't beat winning. You know, and so that's something we need to get on board. And that was our Garrihy Cup adventure, was to get out of the Garrihy Cup and get up to QC Cup. Then you go start mixing with the big boys every second or third week. You know, that's what that's everybody's on a different curve. You know.
Yeah, and I suppose David, in terms of what I was going to say now, in terms of action, in terms of your opponents, Saint Breckan, I suppose for Donie Garrihy as well, he's a charismatic sort of a person that's over Breckans, and he's achieved an awful lot of success, and he's probably on a sort of momentum roll. So it's going to be he's very much a tactical man, so he's going to be coming with sort of bits and pieces in his armory as well. But I suppose it's on the day whoever plays the best football and gets the ball into their forwards and obviously gets a hold of midfield. Tactics aside, it's a simple game. You win ball in midfield, you get it up into the scoring zone, your forwards get in the scoring zone and they put it over the bar. That's how football is won.
It is like, look, tactics have a place to play in modern day football, but if you're ahead in the scoreboard, you know, the tactics change. For you're putting pressure on the opposition's management team to pull a move out of the hat, and that's, you know, that leads to more pressure. That puts pressure on players, and that means more likely nearly a meltdown, like, you know. But you know, it's about you gain the momentum over time, and you know, if you smell weakness, you take it, and you know, that's, you know, you keep going, and I think, I suppose, it's about being ready for a battle and like given hours, I say. You know what I mean? You can't choose the hour or the day, but you have to be ready when somebody picks the time, or the county board say we have to go. That's it, you know, and get on with it.
Yeah, and I suppose the terms of the format this year now, it's very much the first game, it's a sort of a do or die battle. Everyone's treating it as potentially a knockout. If you win the first game, you're into the sort of winner's hat. You know, you could get anyone there, win that game, obviously, depending on the look of the draw. You're one of those 3 teams into county semi-final. I suppose for Cooraclare, first of all, that would be one of their goals achieved. But in terms of that, I suppose you get the opportunity then, if you're one of those 3 teams, you're not involved in that 3-way playoff, you can go and watch that. Obviously, Kilmore, Breckan or Milltown will be one of those teams involved in that 3-way playoff. And plus, for a team that's a young team like yourselves, I suppose the task of maybe playing 2 games of a Friday or of a Monday in the space of 24 hours, that would be sort of a daunting. I suppose it's very much taking the route less served, I suppose, straight through the front door. And I suppose that's the route yourselves and I suppose want to take.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, in fairness, you know, you winning games, and you know, this is the first one against Breckans, is your first chance of furthering yourself in the competition, and of course you're going to take that one, because winning games, you know, especially maybe, you know, the young squad, really, you know, they need that. They need that behind their, you know, that buckle behind them. You know, they need that. Maybe a team longer in the route can you know, mentally switch on a week or two again and get out of that way. But the younger teams in a different curve, like, you know, they need the big victory in the first round to, you know, to get going. You know, and hit their head in the right spot. You know, and that can, you know, they're young men, like, you know, so, you know, that's, you know, things play on their mind. You know, so hopefully win will give confidence, and that's to express yourself in football. You know, that's what
I
that's what it
suppose,
wants.
David, lastly, before I let you go, in terms of the build-up now for the game, have you anyone sort of touch and go, anyone sort of carrying sort of major knocks that'll definitely be out for the first sort of round, or is there sort of players that obviously that might feature later on for you in the championship that are just not available for the Breckans side?
No, everybody is, you know, you have not knock or two like that, but no, everybody is, you know, as near as 100% as we can get them at this stage, and you know, and in 3 weeks' time we'll be, you know, should be raring to go. You know, I mean, they know they knew their date. You know, once players get their date, they know what they have to be ready for. So yeah, at the moment we have everybody, like, you know, there might be a little knock or two, one lad might miss a session or two, but we're trying to manage them that we don't get these injuries, and I think that's our side of it. Maybe other management say we're going to get them so fit, we're going to fit. Well, we're going to be really gunning it by 3 weeks' time. But then that's when you put the pressure on, and you lose somebody the Thursday or the Tuesday night before, you know.
On that note, David Russell, we wish you and the rest of the Cooraclare backroom a management team a very productive 2020 championship. Obviously, in the difficult year that has affected so many people and so many families, we hope that football will bring joy to the Cooraclare supporters, and you can come next October and you can look back at what probably was hopefully a very successful campaign for a proud traditionalist West Clare side in Cooraclare, and hopefully you and you and the rest of the management and your young squad of players achieve the targets you set out to achieve. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us, David.
Thanks, Jim. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Jim Conlan from RCB Radio Sport, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb. That's part of our championship preview show. We're delighted now to be joined by Donie Garrihy, the Saint Breckan's manager, to look ahead at the championship tie between Saint Breckan's and Cooraclare. I suppose, Donie, last year, 2019, a memorable year, a fantastic year for everyone involved in Saint Breckan's. But back to square one now, put on the boots, shorts again, and it's all confined to the history books, a new championship, and an eerie sort of championship as such. And I suppose, were you one of the lucky teams? Did you get to play around the Garrihy Cup, or did you have any action at all this year?
Yeah. On the 10th of March, I think it was the 10th of March, we played Clondegad down in their home ground.
Cusick Cup.
Cusick Cup. Yeah, we came up short that day. That was before we'd say, you know, before we could have use of our county players, you know. So yeah, nice facility down there, good people getting on with their football. We enjoyed the game, and we did okay.
Yeah, and I suppose, Donie, you have some new additions. I suppose Breckans has been a very youthful team in the last few years, and you have a few guys from the county minor set up and were involved that came of age. So that's going to add to your panel. I know Jamie Stack, Patrick Doherty, Shane Fitz, Oisin O'Loughlin, and Owen Gear, and they've all came of age this year. So they're probably young members of your panel, but there are extra additions, extra bodies for training, and few of them very talented footballers, and they could feature, and that's always a good thing when you're constantly adding to a panel, and you, especially coming up from intermediates to senior, to have those extra bodies and lads played at a high level as well.
Well, you know, from one thing you said, Jim, you know, about training, we have no problem with numbers of training, and thank God, you know, our pitches are in good shape. We've plenty numbers, and sometimes maybe too many, but you know what? We never refuse anybody. You know, football is for everybody, and once they come in that gate, you know, They're proud Breckans people, proud Breckans lads, whether they're 17 or whether they're 37. They want to be there. They want to play with their club. You know, as I found out when I went back as manager, Jim, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be with your club. You know, and it's like they say about the championship in Clare, it's a small window this year. It's also a small window to be manager, maybe, you know what I mean? Or to be a player. Your career is only, you know, maybe maximum, maybe 10 years long at the peak level, maybe from 18 or 19 up to 28 or 9. After that, you know, it's going to be tough for. But the age profile of our squad is good, Jim. As you say, you've a good bit of research done. Fair play to you. You always do good research, and yeah, looking forward to the championship. And you know, you said there, Jim, about the history, about last year's history. I want to tell you something, you know, about history. The minute, the second, the millisecond that the referee blows the final whistle, it's history. It has always been history with me. You have to look forward straight away, immediately. If you go and do a big review of your football, no matter what code it is or no matter what you do, and you're not looking forward, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, and I suppose, Donie, I was at your match going back 3 or 4 years ago when Cooraclare met Saint Breckan in the championship, where I was covering the game myself. And it was very much a game of two halves. Cooraclare dominated the first half, and then Saint Breckan came out of the dressing room and dominated the second half. And Saint Breckan went on to win it by the sheer measure of that second half. They had the momentum coming down the home stretch. But it was very much a game of two halves, and it could have gone either way. And I suppose if you look at Cooraclare, I suppose last year it was they would be very disappointed about their league campaign, but they came very much back alive towards championship, and they gave Donegal an awful run for their money, and Donegal wound up in a county semi-final. So Cooraclare are a championship team, and league form very much goes out the window in terms of Cooraclare. But they have been a team that have been rebuilding for the last few years since getting to the county final in 2015. And some of their youngsters, bit by bit, they're beginning to get on an upward curve again, Cooraclare.
Yeah, you know, I suppose Joe Garrihy is counting the days and the weeks and the months since they won their last title in '97. But you know what, Jim? They have 9 more titles or 10 more titles than us. So, you know, they have that history. It favours them. It favours Cooraclare to win championships. This year as well, with the 12 teams, Jim, you know, there's a few clubs there, like ourselves, who've never won a title. There's more than us as well. Our neighbours have never won a title in Steinman. Clondigad have never won a title. Cooraclare haven't won a title in, I think, 23 years. You know, it's a long time since some of the clubs won something, or some of them have never won anything. Kilmehel haven't won a title since 1980. I was at that final, and that's 40 years ago. So, you know, this year, you never know. This year could be one of those clubs to win a title again.
And I suppose, Donie, I suppose Cooraclare have lost a terrific servant to Clare football. He's gone back to America, Sean O'Donoghue. But what they have lost, they've gained in a terrific minor, probably one of the best minors in Munster last year for Clare, probably one of the best minors in not only Munster but in the country. In Donie Garrihy, he was absolutely outstanding for Clare last year, and he's going to be a real pivotal player for Cooraclare this year. And I suppose Jamie probably knows him too well from minor training as well. But you have the likes of Pádraig O'Donoghue, a county minor in 2018, the year before that as well. So the Cooraclare have some pedigree. Some of those youngsters, they're getting a bit older. Pádraig O'Donoghue, Kieran O'Donoghue, so they're beginning coming in. Especially, these are talented boys. They may be young, but they're talented.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that Cooraclare always had was talent, and they always got the most out of their talented players. You know, like I'm 54, going back like 35 years, you know, in Gaelic football, or 40 years in Gaelic football. Anytime we ever played Cooraclare, it was just fantastic, brilliant football, and we always left everything on the pitch, both teams, and it won't be any different come championship in 4 weeks' time, or just less than 4 weeks' time, about 3 weeks and maybe 4 or 5 days' time. And you know, that's what you get from Cooraclare's excellent football, and they've had excellent coaches down through the years. Well, you know, I don't have to name them, but like they've had, you know, they've always, like, if you think big, you're going to get somewhere. If you think big, if you think on the ditch, you'll be left on the ditch, Jim.
And I suppose, Donie, in terms of your panel, I know last year, as you progressed further on in the Intermediate Championship, Pat Nagle and Dennis O'Driscoll came on shore and rode their hands to their cause. And I suppose in terms of your panel, you've gained an awful lot of youngsters this year. Are Dennis and Pat, they're going to make their cut at trying to make Senior Championship an impression this year? Or have you lost any players from your panel?
Yeah, Pat's gone playing junior football this year. Pat lives in Loughrea now, so it's kind of impossible for Pat. You know what I mean? And he's a young family, and so we have gained a few players. We have gained Cathal Guerin back from New Zealand. So Cathal is a big player. He's my neighbour there, and his brother Owen Guerin has come back from Limerick FC in the soccer. So them two guys are on the panel as well. And Rafa Considine, who was away in Australia, I believe. So I think it was Australia. So he's back now. He'd have played in that game against Cooraclare in 18. So you know, they're big additions. They make our squad stronger than last year. And Oisin obviously wasn't in the squad last year. So Oisin is, you know, right up the tail of Tristan O'Callaghan as a goalkeeper. So we've competition now all around the field. And you know, even though we've only had a couple of weeks together, maybe 2 or 3 weeks together, just over 3 weeks together, they've really rode in. Everybody has rode in, and looking forward to, you know, playing a couple of challenge matches, Jim, friendly matches I used to call them one time, but they're challenges now. And look, we've played one already. We'll play a couple of more. And you know, try and sharpen up, like, and get rid of the cobwebs. You know, try to get up to match fitness. No matter how many hills you run, or how many 80-meter sprints you do, or whatever time you can do, unless you have the match fitness, no, you're going nowhere.
And I suppose, Donie, in terms of a few members of your panel as well, being called up to the Clare setup under Colin Collins, for example, young Davidson is called up, his training with him. Jack Sheedy's part of the panel, and Joe McGann has burst on to the starting team as such, and he featured heavily towards the end of the league. That must be a bonus as well, those players training with inter-county players on a week. I know you lose them you wouldn't have lost them given the year that it has been, but in terms of that, those players getting that experience as well for them under Cullum's training, that must be a boost for you as well.
Also Alan Sweeney as well, and also Dale Masterson. So it's been good for them, you know, because when they left the Clare, when the Clare setup was closed down, you know, by the government, by the GA. You know, they left with a program as well. So those guys are in good shape. They're in good shape. They're in a great environment with Clare, and you know, they're not in a bad environment with us neither. You know what I mean? So and we have them all the time now, and we'll hopefully have them, you know, for until near the end of the championship. Hopefully we'll have them, you know, for them boys. You know what I mean? And Jamie was there with the Clare 20s, and Oisin was there with the Clare 20s as well. So, you know, they're good guys, and it's great to have them. It's better to have them than be looking for them.
Yeah. And I suppose, Donie, in terms of attacking ability, both sides carry a real sort of attacking threat. And Cooraclare have the likes of Jack Morrissey, but also the likes of John Looney, who's so pivotal. He can play in midfield, John Looney, but he's also a guy that can play really at the edge of the square, full forward, a huge sort of target man as well. So there are probably things that you probably have to look towards, but you're probably excited to look towards those challenges as well that Cooraclare will bring to the table.
Yeah, definitely. You know, playing like at the senior championship in hurling or in football in your county, Jim, you know, it is what it is. You're going to be up against the best teams. You're going to be up against the biggest players, the fittest players. You know, every club, every team will have inter-county players. You know, they'll have the elite players. So it won't be a shock to us. You know what I mean? We'll be prepared for that. We'll be expecting that. And if we get anything less, we'll be really surprised. You know, they have Pierce Lillis as well. You haven't named him. I don't know why you haven't named him. But anyway, look, we do our bit of homework as well.
And I suppose, Donie, in terms of this championship and speaking to one or two managers, the quickest way to a county semi-final obviously is through the front door. Win your 2 games, you're there. Every team is probably treating this as knockout championship. The first game is practically knockout for teams because no one wants to go through that backdoor route, because obviously if you go through that backdoor route, there's a chance that you will have to play 2 games in the one day, plus your 3 semi-finalist opponents will be all at the stands watching and waiting and doing all their homework as well on the 4th team that's going to make the semi-finals spot. So obviously the quickest route is through the front door, win the first game, and then see obviously the draw for the second round. No, that's furthest from your attention, but that's going to be equally as tough as well. But that's where Breckans want to be, I imagine.
Easier said than done, Jim. The fastest way to the semi-final. Easier said than done. You know, we end up in a semi-final. I take either route. You know what I mean? Now, the best way, like, create momentum, win your first game. You know, you set out your stall. Yeah, that's what the plan will be, and we won't be taking our eyes off the prize there.
Yeah, and I suppose, Donie, I suppose last year, you're in your second year, you probably have got to grips in terms of the teams and getting to know all the competitors and stuff like that. Yeah. So in terms of that, the second year, so it was a very successful year in 2019. But in terms of you, in terms of getting bedded back into the scene, are you sort of more enthusiastic and more sort of relaxed this year in terms of last year, where last year there would have been great sort of pressure, I suppose, and expectation for Saint Breckan to bounce back straight up to senior. This year, I suppose, around you can really start to have a cut and enjoy the championship. I suppose you have real ambitions, but in terms of people who look at Cooraclare, Kilmurray, Breckan, Rogue, possibly Milltown as the 4 key runs. So there's probably not that expectation as what there was probably last year, where probably yourselves and Kildare were raging hot favourites.
Yeah, I suppose the big change for me this year is I'm now in the Gaelic zone. You know, last year it was catch up all the time. It was intimidating for me. I tell you what, you know what I mean? But I had good lads with me, like to help me along. I was continuously going back and referencing soccer, and I was very aware of that. Like, and but you see, I was a long time away from the Gaelic, so instead of cheating and lying about it and letting on I know about it, I just said no, I don't, and that's it. But now I'm in the Gaelic zone, in the mode now for Gaelic football, and you know, so doing research and getting to know the clubs from last year, you know, going to the senior games as well. You know, we played the same day and we stayed on and watched the games or whatever. Yeah, that'd be grand. And so we know more now. I know more now, and I'm not as nervous about it, Jim. Not as nervous about the football and the rules and everything. Like, you know, I've good people with me. Declan O'Keefe is with me. John McDonough is with me. Pat Hawk is with me. Jersey's with me. A brilliant board. You know, you're only as good as the club that's behind you. And I'm very lucky that I have a real good club, a real good committee that are driving it on. Like, and you know what I mean? They're as doing as much work as I am. You know, they're building dressing rooms, they're opening new dressing rooms, they're putting the gymnasium, brilliant gymnasium. So, you know, that inspires me as well. Like, and what really inspires me above anything is the privilege of doing it with my own club, you know, where my own children play. You know, so, you know, like, we have a brilliant chairman in Paula Loughlin, a brilliant man in Sean McNamara. We've Paul Burke is a great secretary, and you know, they help me. You know, for instance, yesterday, you know, we've challenge matches coming up. I get an email, you just send on the details, and I look after it. So all that stuff, it's not like me and my bag of footballs and off I go, and you know nothing. Like, it's great. The club are a great help, and we're 50 years old next year, and they're preparing for it and looking forward to it, and it's a milestone, and you know, and it's our own.
I suppose lastly, Donie, Many people across the Clare sector and probably in the media sector and pundits looking at this game, in terms of the 6 ties, they'll probably say, oh, well, maybe you could give an advantage, maybe 60-40 in that team or 55-40. Many people are calling this a dead even rubber. They're talking about possibility of extra time in this game, that this could be the closest of all the games. And this game will be in the melting pot going into the last 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm not saying that about every game, but that is the perception of all the 6 ties, that this is the closest game this evening, and it's very hard one to call. And I suppose you would expect nothing less that this game will be in the melting pot, going right down the stretch. Even probably it could be the last kick of the ball that will decide this game. 2 evenly matched teams.
You know, Jim, you know the way I look at it. This is the way I look at it. Like, I am not from one moment avoiding your comment. Okay, the way I look at it is, our country, our county was in such a terrible state, and has been in a terrible state for March, April, May, June. Businesses, my business, anything at all, you know, any type of Gaelic football, soccer, hurling that takes place with a competitive edge and able to bring a group of people together in our training pitch, or in our football pitch, or in the pitches of Cooraclare, Doonbeg, Clondigad, Lissigacey, Kilmurray, wherever. I'm sure it's a breath of fresh air for the community, for the managements, for the players. It's a get out, you know what I mean? It's let's go out and meet the people. We live in a Facebook, in a WhatsApp, in a Skype, in a Zoom world for the last 4 months. And you know what? It's been really tough. It's been really tough. And people are glad to get out there. And any type of a format, I would have been happy with. Any opposition, we'd have been happy to play and have the chance to play football this year. You know what I mean? 2020.
Donie, on that note, we wish Saint Breckans all the best in their return to the senior football championship. We hope it's a prosperous campaign for you and Saint Breckans, and you achieve the targets that you set out to achieve at the start of the year. And best of luck to all involved, and hopefully it'll be an enjoyable championship for you and your players, Donie.
Thank you, Jim. Pleasure.
Thank you.